Hi, my name is Sam, aka Studio Sam, and welcome to my first ever tutorial. Today we're going to be using Effect House to create a TikTok AI effect, but we're going to be applying our own custom background to the resulting image. Currently in Effect House there is no easy way to do this. You can apply a background prior to the AI effect, but the resulting image will also manipulate the background also, which in some cases might be fine, but in other cases you might want to use like a really specific background image. So this is the way that I found to do that. It's not a perfect solution, but it seems to work pretty well. So yeah, let's get started. So the way that I found to do this, basically when I was playing around with the different AI effects, I noticed that the user image, the frozen user image, and the resulting AI image, the silhouette of the user was almost identical. So I thought maybe you could use like a portrait segmentation texture, apply that to the AI image, and yeah, then hide everything on the outside and then reveal your custom background behind it. But what I realized is basically the user image and the AI image is frozen, but the portrait segmentation texture remains active. So you can see the segmentation changing. So basically what we need to do is we need to freeze the segmentation texture. Again, there's no real easy way to do that, but we're going to be using render parsers and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this effect. I'm going to create it in a way that hopefully makes it really clear to you guys like what's happening and how it's working. And then after we do that, I'm going to delete all of the stuff that we don't need, clean up the project a little bit, and sort of just change it so you can see it as a use case. And from there, hopefully you'll be able to make it your own and do what you want with it. So yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to freeze the user texture. The reason we're going to do this is because when using the effect, basically we want the user to tap the screen. That will freeze the user texture, and then afterwards we'll reveal the background and the AI image. But for first thing we want to do is just freeze that user texture. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a 2D image, screen image. We're going to call this render texture here, or this render group, user render. We'll label this screen image user. We'll change the texture here to the device camera texture. I'm not sure why my cursor's doing that, but looks kind of cool. And then here we're going to add our own render texture. So render textures can be used as defining sort of the output of a camera within your scene. So let's just rename this user render texture. And then on the camera here, we'll change the render texture to the user render texture. So now it's outputting that texture. Anything that's in this render group will be outputted to that texture. To show you what's happening, let's create another render group. Let's call this one test render. We'll change the camera output just to be the final render output so we can see what's going on. Now the user texture here, we'll change the texture to the user render texture. We'll change the scale to, I don't know, 0.25. We'll move it to the left so we can see what's going on. And there, so we have the output of that user render group outputting onto that image there. So now we want to freeze that image. Now, the way that we do that, we use a node called snapshot. So snapshot, it just takes in a camera texture. You trigger it any way you want. It does its thing and then outputs the frozen texture. And then, yeah, we'll just apply that to a screen image. So the way that we want this to work is we want it to work on a screen tap. So I connect that to there. I select the user render texture, go into my test render, make sure this is selected, set the texture over here, connect that to that. and then make the resulting texture this texture here. So fingers crossed, when I tap the screen now, it will freeze the user. Cool, there we go. That's the first step. We've frozen the user render texture. Cool. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to freeze the segmentation texture. So let's just copy this render group here, rename it from user render to segmentation render. We can rename this image here to segmentation. Now what we want, so we're going to create our segmentation texture. So we'll go here and we'll select the portrait segmentation texture, which is basically just the user. We're going to apply it to this image here. Portrait segmentation texture. Now we're going to need another render texture to output from this camera onto our test render group. So I'll add another render texture. We'll call this one segmentation render texture. We'll apply it to this camera here. Then in our test render, we'll create another image. We'll call that segmentation. Move it to the middle so we can see it. And we'll make this image the output of our segmentation render group. Cool, so you can see that now. It's displaying the mask, essentially, the user portrait segmentation texture mask. So now we want to freeze that as well. So we'll move our screen tap back, and in between these nodes, we'll add a sequence so that when we tap, we can do multiple things at once. We need another snapshot. This time our texture input is going to be the segmentation render texture. And then when it's done, we're going to apply that frozen texture to this segmentation image. So here, set texture, that to there, the texture output to this texture input. And when I tap, you can see the user's frozen and the segmentation texture is also frozen. Cool. Now let's create the AI portion of this effect. So luckily in Effect House, they make it super simple for us. So inside the test render, we don't need a render pass for this. So I'll just call this image AI. We will move it to the right so we can see it. For now, before the AI effect has done its magic, we're just going to put in the user render texture. Now in here, we need to create a new texture, and it's the AI art texture. Cool. So we can choose the style here, we can edit the prompt strength. I know recently Effect House added like loads of new AI effects, which is really cool. Oh, I've never seen wood before, but that looks really cool. Yeah, let's just try that. Apply model, there we go. Right, so again, we want it to work when the user taps on the screen. So what we're gonna do is we're going to get a new node, which is the AI generation controller. And we want that to start when the user taps. We need to define the AI texture here. So that's the AI texture that we just created, AI art texture. Then we have some options here: on waiting, on start, during, on success, on failed, the resulting texture, and then a server message, which basically if there's an error, it can output a message like no internet connection or something like that. So we start the AI generation controller, and we want to apply the resulting image on success. So when the AI has been successfully applied to the image. So we're going to take the AI texture there, and we're going to set the texture on success, and we're going to apply that texture there. Now, currently, if I tap the screen, it will be working in the background, but there's no visual representation to tell us that we've even tapped the screen or anything's going on. So during this testing phase, I like to add a little something just to show us that at least it's working. I've tapped on the screen. So to do that, we'll create another image here. We'll just call it loading. I'm going to change the stretch mode to stretch. I'll make it 200 by 200. You can see it here. Let's change the texture to just a white texture. Let's make it a little smaller. It's a bit big. Cool. We're going to start it not visible. Oh, there we go. And then basically when we tap the screen, we want the square to be visible. So we'll do set visibility. We'll select our loading image as the target and we'll put the visibility on. We're also going to add a little fancy spin to our loading image because why not? So we'll take a transit by time. We'll keep it on number and we'll go from 0 to 360, which will be a full rotation. It will take 1 second to do a full rotation. We'll add ease in and out because again, why not? And we'll loop it 999 times so that the animation basically will never stop by the time the AI is working. So I'll set the rotation here. We'll put it in the stay execute, which means while it's doing its thing, its calculations, it's always going to be updating that texture or the rotation of the texture. And we'll put the number into the value. Now, when the AI is done, so on success, we want to hide that loading texture. So let's add another sequence. When that's done, set visibility, get our loading texture, and keep it on or unchecked. So it will turn the visibility off. So now I'm going to tap on the screen. You can see the little loading square that I've added, which means at least it's recognized we've tapped on the screen. Normally the AI effect, obviously it depends on your internet connection and stuff, but for me it takes 5 to 6 seconds. Cool, and there it is. We have the AI image. Now you may notice that the AI image and the frozen textures that I've done are sort of at different times. On the left, like she's got her head nodding down, and on the AI image, she's looking straight forward. We don't want this for our final effect because we want the portrait segmentation to match up perfectly to the AI image. So to change that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the AI art texture here. And then this here is going to tell us what we're inputting into the AI effect to manipulate. So right now it's just the built-in render output, which is essentially everything. We're going to change that to the user render texture, which as we know, we're freezing. So it should be applied to the same image of that frozen user texture. So I'm going to tap the screen. I'm going to wait till she's looking down. It's a good way to test it. So you can see on the left, she's looking down. The segmentation is frozen at the same time. Currently, the default image that we have for the AI texture is still moving, but we'll change that. And what we're looking for is in the AI texture, when it's finished generating, it will be in that same nodding position, just to make sure we've got everything timed up correctly. Okay, cool. So my laptop was being super slow and the loading animation was just happening forever, so I did it again. But as you can see, I mean, perhaps the wood AI example is not the best thing. I think it's put the face forward. But if you try and look at the silhouette of the user in all three, you can tell that it's at the same point in time. So cool, that's working. So the next thing we're going to do is we're basically going to combine these three textures. the user texture, the portrait segmentation, and the resulting AI effect. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make another render group. Cool. Let's call this final user render. Can delete all these. Keep the user. Let's change it so that it's going to fill the whole screen. So this is basically, now I'm creating the final effect that you can see how it works. So we need to freeze this image when the user taps the screen, which we already know how to do. We've got it here on our sort of test user image. Let's just grab this texture here, set texture, and let's do that. Cool, tap the screen and it's frozen. There we go. Now I'm going to create another render group for our final AI effect. So again, we can copy this. We'll call it final AI render. What we're going to do is we're going to hide it. Let's just call this AI. Right, so here we've got the set texture. Again, we'll set the new texture and we'll make sure it's the resulting AI texture. But now when the AI is successful, what we're going to do is we're going to set the visibility to true so that when it's done, it just shows. So let's do that. Set visibility. We'll get the latest AI image and set visibility to on. So right now on the AI art texture, by default, it's got a transition duration. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of that. I just want, when the AI is finished, I just want it to sort of pop into existence. Again, we've got another AI effect. So really we want that loading screen to show. Right now it's on this render group, which will be hidden by that user. So I'm just going to drag that into here so we can see it. I'm going to move it into the middle. And when I tap, you can see the user texture is frozen. We've got the little loading animation, and hopefully it won't take too long, but we should have the AI image. There we go, just like that. Now, you may think that the only thing left to do is to apply that frozen segmentation texture to the camera of the final render group and use it as a mask. But I think I can show you actually what happens when you do that. So yeah, so I've checked enable mask here, the final camera. I'm going to select that segmentation render texture, even though we freeze it. I'll click the screen and I'll show you what happens. Basically, what you're going to see is, even though we've applied that texture as a mask, that portrait segmentation is still going to be moving as if it was live. Yeah, so you can see here, you can like sort of tell in the background that the segmentation is moving about. It doesn't actually look too bad in this example, but that's only because the demo video, she's not moving about too much in it, but in normal circumstances, when you're filming with your camera, you'll be moving all over the place, and yeah, it will basically just look really bad. So yeah, let's fix that. So the way that I've worked out how to do this is basically we're going to create another render group. We're going to output the segmentation render texture into that group, create another render texture and use that. So if we copy that here, we'll call it segmentation render freeze. We'll label this segmentation freeze. Now this texture, we're going to make the segmentation render texture. And what we're going to do is we're going to freeze that. So let's set the texture, put it after our segmentation that was in our test render group, apply that texture to it. Now we will create a new render texture. Segmentation, render, texture, freeze. That's a really long name, but oh well. We'll apply it to the camera here. And then that output is actually what we're going to use as the mask. So segmentation, render, freeze. There we go. So just so we can make it a little bit clearer that it's working and we can apply our own backgrounds, we're actually going to do that now. So for the sake of time, let's copy that render group, put it above there. We'll call this background render. We'll delete that. We'll call this background. Let's make it visible for now so we can see what's going on. So yeah, there's a default background texture. Go into the camera, remove the mask. Now this is the background that we want to be applied, but while we start the effect, we don't want it visible right at the start. So get rid of the visibility, and then again, on success, we'll add another little exit for our sequence, set visibility. We'll select our background image and visibility on. So hopefully now I'll tap the screen. Oh, I didn't put this back on, right. Reset, show everything, tap the screen, the user's frozen, we've got the loading animation, and fingers crossed we'll have the perfect segmentation and we'll see our background behind it. Cool, there we go, that's it. You can see there's no more movement of the segmentation portrait texture, so this is working. Okay, so I've just tested this a few times, and as you can see, like there's still sort of some artifacts around the segmentation. Like I said, it's not a perfect solution, but it seems to work okay. One thing you can do is you can go into the portrait segmentation texture itself, and you can turn this smoothness down. So what the smoothness is doing is it's kind of giving you a little bit of leeway on the segmentation. But for this example, because everything's frozen, we want it to be quite sharp. So if I test that again, hopefully this time there's less artifact and it looks a little bit better. But of course, this can depend on the quality of the phone and how good the camera is, how busy the background is, and everything like that. So yeah, there you go. You see there's like a sharper line around this segmentation here, and it looks pretty good. I'm going to change this to 0.2. I'm going to reset the effect. Let's try it with someone else. Let's try it with this guy. Let's go into the AI art texture. Let's change the style to, let's change it to this one. This one looks pretty cool. Let's tap and see how this one looks. So this, like in this example, the demo video, it's got like short hair, so it should be a little bit cleaner. And yeah, there you go. We've got the AI image and we've got our own custom background behind it, which isn't being affected by the AI at all. So that's great, it works. Now for the final part of this tutorial, we're going to clean up the project a little bit. A lot of this stuff isn't needed. We don't need the test render group anymore and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and do that. We can straight away click the test render. Let's just delete that. And then here we have missing. Don't need that, but we need to connect that. This is not here anymore. Connect that. This is not here anymore. This is all just like the stuff we had inside the test render group. We don't need the update. We don't need the start. Okay, there's probably some more stuff that could be deleted to make that a bit better, but for now that will do. One thing I like to do when I'm creating an effect like this is, instead of when the user taps, it just freezes straight away, I like to add like a little bit of countdown, like kind of like a photo booth, I guess. I'll leave that up to you guys to do. Maybe I could do that in another tutorial if you want, like how I do countdowns. But for now we have this, it works well, and yeah, we're just going with it. If you got any questions, just reach out, message me on Instagram or do a comment or whatever. Yeah, and I'll answer those, and all the project files will be in the description. Hopefully this was simple enough to understand. I think I said render texture 20,000 times. Render texture, render texture, render texture. Said it a few more times. Cool. Yeah, thanks for watching.